Which aspect of advocacy do you find most difficult, and how have you looked to overcome that difficulty?
I think it's, just as I was alluding to earlier, it's about getting to grips with the purpose of why you're there. You're there to persuade the judge. How do you do that? You have a conversation with them. You're not there to give a speech. That's just not going to work. It's not going to be interactive. It's not going to be the best way of actually getting through the issues. It just doesn't work like that. So I think always coming back to that motto of how can I help the judge? Remember, it's that conversation, and it's a formal conversation, which seems like a bit of a dichotomy at first, but once you get to grips with those basic structures and basic modes of language, which we were talking about earlier, then it becomes a lot more natural to do that. But I think that's what you've got to keep returning to, is thinking about how can you assist the court. And of course, a large part of that is in preparation as well. If you know where your page numbers are, you know what your cases are, you know your points, then the conversation again becomes a lot easier. So I think doing all of that preparation makes it so much easier to be natural when you're then appearing in front of the tribunal, because you've got all of that work and that confidence behind you. You can then start to relax into it, and you can actually see it for what it is, which it should be a two-way dialogue. And if it's not a two-way dialogue, the judge isn't engaging with what you're saying, then either it's going very, very well or very, very badly. But probably most of the time the latter rather than the former.
Thanks, Robert. Does anyone else have any advice on this point?
I think Robert covered a great deal of it there. I think it's a very good point. When you're first on your feet and you're first doing your first bits of advocacy, it's very easy to feel very awkward. And it's very easy to, I think, as Robert said, just have everything. Effectively, you just want to give your speech and get out of there, rather than have the conversation. I think that's something that just comes with experience, really. If you just keep doing it, and that includes mooting, doesn't necessarily have to be the job, mooting, debating, these types of events and activities, help you develop that more natural flow, that more natural style, which fits into your way of doing it. And then it becomes more of a conversation. You're less reliant on even just things like notes, effectively, and you can just you have your case in your head, and you can just focus on having that engagement with the judge or with whoever the tribunal is, whether it's a jury or whoever it might be.
Thank you. Beth, any final thoughts on that point?
I think it's mostly been covered. Maybe to deal with it from a slightly different angle. I think when you start out as a second six pupil in particular, you need to expect to face some challenges and also some criticism. And it's something that we see a little bit in moots, but it's quite a supportive environment when you're mooting. When you're in court for real and you have real judges who have a lot of cases to get through, some of them can be a little bit impatient with you, and some of them can be really quite critical. And I think it's important to recognise that that's normal when you start out. At least that's what I've been told. And that you just have to do your best and crack on and not crumble under that pressure. Keep your head, keep going, and you'll learn for the next time. But that idea that criticism is bad, I think, is something that comes through academics. And I think putting that to one side and just thinking, no, I just need to get through this, keep my head, make the points I need to make, even if I've not got the best case, for example. I think that's a really important thing to recognise as a pupil.
Yeah, so Rebecca and Michael, do you have anything to add on this point?
Yes, I mean, I think the original question was about whether what we found difficult and how we overcame it. And from my point of view, it was knowing how far is too far, which is something I tend to struggle with in real life. I like the courtroom because it has rules and it has structure to it that a normal social interaction doesn't. But sometimes I would be concerned, or well, is this point going to sound a bit stupid, or is the judge going to think I'm an idiot? Am I going to get told off for raising it? And the reality is, if it is well-founded, arguable, properly arguable, is what you need to always come back to, because that's the ethical principle, and you can support it in law and in fact, then you are welcome to put the point, even if the judge is going to disagree with you. So just think about the best way of putting it. And that's what I found the easiest way of dealing with that nervousness, which comes from being new and comes from not necessarily knowing the tribunal that's in front of you. But any good judge will appreciate any well put point, even if they ultimately disagree with you.